August 14, 2015, Henderson County, North Carolina. At 3:10 p.m., local hunters David and Charles Martin were patrolling their land when they spotted a dark, irregularly shaped object in the crown of a white oak tree about 6 meters above the ground. After 10 years of exposure to rain and sun, the fabric had fused with the bark and resembled a large gray ball. Using binoculars, the brothers saw damaged synthetic fabric and the remains of a zipper. At 5:47 p.m., they relayed the coordinates 35-42-19N, 82-2-28-2W to the sheriff's office. The next day, August 15th, at 11:00 a.m., a team consisting of a National Park Service ranger and 2 sheriff's deputies arrived at the site. Climbing equipment was used to remove the object. At 1:35 p.m., the sleeping bag, weighing about 48 kilograms, was lowered to the ground and packed onto a canvas platform. After opening the fabric, the remains of 2 people were found. According to the initial conclusion of the medical examiner, they were a man and a woman in their mid-20s. The woman's skeleton showed signs of late pregnancy. The site was declared a crime scene, and the area within a radius of 100 meters was cordoned off with tape. Additional experts from the State Department of Forensic Medicine were called in. Preliminary identification. The remains are likely those of Daniel and Melissa Barkley, a married couple who disappeared in July 2005 while hiking in Pisgah National Forest. The case was officially reopened that same day, Monday, July 18, 2005. At 7:20 a.m., Daniel Barkley, a 28-year-old employee of a local IT company in Asheville, and his wife, 25-year-old Melissa Barkley, who was 6 months pregnant, left their home in a gray 2001 Toyota RAV4 SUV with North Carolina license plates. According to neighbors, they loaded 2 large blue and black backpacks, a folded tent, and bags of food. Both were dressed in light summer clothing suitable for a day hike. Melissa in a light cotton t-shirt and dark pants, Daniel in a green short-sleeved shirt and gray-beige shorts. At 9:05 a.m. that same day, the car was spotted in the parking lot of Big Ivy Trailhead, Pisgah National Forest. It was photographed by a local volunteer who was monitoring the parking lot's occupancy. The photo clearly shows a gray RAV4 parked between 2 other cars. A further inspection of the car after the disappearance revealed that 2 mobile phones, Nokia 3310 and Motorola V60, wallets with driver's licenses, bank cards, and a total of $128 in cash, as well as a change of clothes, were left in the passenger compartment. The car was locked, and there were no signs of forced entry or break-in. This indicated an intention to return to this exact spot, with no plans to leave the region by other means of transport. The last confirmed contact with the couple was recorded at 9:20 a.m. John Henderson, a 58-year-old tourist from Tennessee who was traveling the same route that morning, reported talking to the couple near the trailhead. According to him, Daniel and Melissa seemed calm, had all the necessary equipment, and did not express any concern. The conversation lasted no more than 2 minutes and concerned the weather and the condition of the route. Henderson described the couple's clothing and backpacks and confirmed that they were heading in the direction of Douglas Falls Trail. After that time, there were no confirmed contacts with Daniel and Melissa. They left no records in the tourist logs located along the main sections of the route, did not use their bank cards, and their cell phones did not connect to the network. The last activity on their phones was at 9:05 a.m., when the devices entered an area without signal, which is typical for remote areas of Pisgah National Forest. After talking to their friends and family, it was found that the couple had planned a week-long loop hike through Big Ivy, heading to Douglas Falls, and then on to the northern section of the Art Loeb Trail, with a return to the parking lot no later than July 25th. This was to be their last trip together before the birth of their child. Daniel took vacation from July 18th to 26th, which he communicated to his boss in an email at 6:02 a.m. on the day of departure. During her last phone call with her mother on July 16th, Melissa confirmed, "We have everything ready. We have a tent, red and blue sleeping bags, food for a week, and a water filter. The forecast is good." At the time of departure, the forecast did indeed show stable air temperatures between 20 and 24 degrees Celsius, with no significant precipitation. No storms were recorded in the region for the coming week. This factor later allowed investigators to rule out sudden bad weather as the primary cause of the disappearance. Additional analysis of personal belongings in the Barclay apartment in Asheville showed that they did not take their passports or any important documents with them, and there was no movement of funds in their bank accounts after July 17th. Records from pharmacies and hospitals showed that Melissa regularly visited a gynecologist and had no pregnancy problems at the time. In fact, at 9:20 a.m. on July 18, 2005, Daniel and Melissa Barclay were last seen among other people. From that moment on, their further route remains unknown. The couple did not show up at any of the camps and left no traces at the checkpoints. For the records of the Henderson County Sheriff's Office, this day and time are officially designated as the starting point of the disappearance of the Barclays case. Wednesday, July 20, 2005, at 1:40 p.m., Susan Carlisle, Melissa Barclay's mother, called the Henderson County Sheriff's Office. She reported that she had been unable to contact her daughter and son-in-law for 2 days. According to her, Melissa always made brief contact during previous trips, even if she had to search for an area with a stable signal. Given her pregnancy, the lack of any news seemed suspicious. The officer on duty recorded the report and filed an initial report. Thursday, July 21, 2005. At 8:15 a.m., Sheriff Harold Whitmore ordered the case to be reclassified as missing persons in the wilderness. At 9:00 a.m., an operations headquarters was set up in the conference room of the Asheville Municipal Building. The headquarters consisted of 2 detectives from the Major Crimes Division, a National Guard liaison officer, the head of the Regional Search and Rescue Service, and a representative of the National Park Service. Initial actions: checking the couple's bank accounts, no transactions after July 17th, confirmation through mobile phone operators' communications departments. Both phones were last registered on the network on July 18th at 9:05 a.m. in the Big Ivy parking lot area. An official request for access to the vehicle confirmed that the gray Toyota RAV4 found in the parking lot remained untouched. At 11:00 a.m., the first phase of the search began. 60 volunteers were involved in the operation, including local residents, members of mountain clubs, and national park employees. A mobile headquarters was set up in the Big Ivy Trailhead parking lot. Search sectors were defined on a square-mile basis. The total area was 28 square miles. At 12:40 p.m., 4 canine teams arrived from the neighboring county of Bankum. The dogs were given Barclay's clothes from home, brought by relatives. The initial trail confirmed the couple's movement from the parking lot towards Douglas Falls. However, after 2 miles of marked trail, the scent dissipated and the dogs showed uncertain behavior. At 1:30 p.m., the first flyover of the area was conducted by a North Carolina National Guard UH-60 helicopter. The waterfalls, several open glades, and part of the high mountain ridges were surveyed from the air. No visual signs of a camp or fire were found. Forest cover blocks more than 90% of the surface, so the aerial survey yielded minimal results. By the end of the day on July 21st, approximately 9 square miles had been combed. No traces of a camp, clothing, food packaging, or any other items were found. The report submitted at 8:45 p.m. stated, "No results. Search conditions: dense undergrowth, humidity, difficult terrain. The probability of finding traces without special indicators is low." On July 22nd, the operation was expanded. 23 more volunteers from other districts joined the search. The search area was expanded northward to the Art Loeb Trail. Checkpoints were set up on 2 mountain roads to check for Barkley's possible appearance in other areas. No vehicles or hikers matching the description were reported at the checkpoints. Over the next 3 days, the work continued in 2 shifts, using portable radios and standard communication protocols. Each day, the search teams formed a chain with intervals of 5 to 10 meters. Each participant was tasked with checking the ground, ravines, gullies, and possible shelters. All findings were recorded, even cigarette butts or scraps of fabric. All objects found turned out to be random tourist trash unrelated to the couple. On July 26th, after 5 days of fruitless searching, the Operation Command prepared an interim report. It stated, as of July 26, 2005, there are no signs of Daniel and Melissa Barkley in the surveyed area. An expansion of the search area to the eastern section of Pisgah National Forest is being considered. The initial stage of the search revealed the main problem: a complete lack of any material traces. No pieces of clothing, equipment, or traces of a campfire were found. This was the first sign to detectives that the case might go beyond a standard lost tourists scenario. Saturday, July 23, 2005. At 9:30 a.m., the search operation headquarters at the Big Ivy Trailhead parking lot received a phone call from the dispatcher at the Burnsville bus station in Yancey County. The employee reported that on July 22nd at around 5:15 p.m., one of the Greyhound intercity bus drivers saw a young pregnant woman at the station who allegedly matched Melissa Barkley's description. The driver noticed her appearance because of her noticeable round belly and a small backpack in her hands. According to him, the woman was sitting on a bench next to a man in a light-colored shirt. At 11 a.m. that same day, Sheriff's Office investigator Detective Mark Kelly drove to Burnsville. The station is located 37 miles from Pisgah National Forest, approximately 50 minutes by car. According to the report, the detective reviewed the surveillance camera recordings for the specified time period. The quality of the archived videos was poor, black and white format, no clear images of faces. Despite this, it was determined that the woman who was considered similar was a passenger on a flight to Johnson City, Tennessee. Her ticket was paid for with someone else's credit card. The name on the receipt was Allison Murray, 29 years old. At 1:40 p.m., the cashier was questioned. She recalled that the woman was indeed pregnant, but had a completely different hair color and spoke with a distinct northern accent. Thus, the initial version of Melissa Barkley's possible appearance at the bus station was officially rejected. Meanwhile, at the search headquarters, the information about the evidence caused confusion. On July 23rd and 24th, part of the forces were diverted to check public transport routes in neighboring counties. 14 ticket offices were checked, and 27 bus drivers were interviewed. All responses were negative. On July 25th, the Sheriff's Office received another report. A resident of a small village on Route 197 reported seeing a young couple with backpacks late at night at a gas station. After clarifying the details, it turned out that this was another family of tourists from Georgia returning from a camping trip. A check of the gas station's credit checks confirmed this. The summary report from July 26th stated, "False reports diverted resources for 72 hours. The efforts of the main search teams in Pisgah National Forest were reduced, which affected the pace of coverage of the area." On the same day, the head of the operation, Ranger Douglas Hill, resumed the previous sectoral search pattern. By the end of July, an additional 11 square miles of territory northeast of Douglas Falls had been surveyed. The results remained negative. Search dogs found no scent, and aerial surveys found no signs of human activity. In the final report for August 2005, Detective Kelly stated, "Previous reports from citizens should be treated with a high degree of skepticism. All confirmed facts indicate that Daniel and Melissa Barkley did not leave Pisgah National Forest after July 18, 2005. Thus, the false alarms not only wasted time and resources, but also confirmed the main point. There is no evidence that the couple left the forest. The official search operation continued, but gradually lost intensity and became a formality. After 3 weeks of active searching, which yielded no results, the Henderson County Sheriff's Office began to form the first working versions of the circumstances surrounding the disappearance of Daniel and Melissa Barkley. The operation officially lasted until August 10, 2005, after which the number of personnel involved gradually decreased. Only ranger patrols remained, periodically checking remote areas of Pisgah National Forest. In an interim report dated August 12th, detectives identified 3 main hypotheses. An accident in a remote area. The logic behind this version was based on the fact that the couple could have strayed from the main trail, fallen off a cliff, or fallen into one of the numerous ravines. Pisgah is known for its caves and old mines, which are not shown on modern maps. If one of them was injured, the other could have stayed nearby, unable to reach people. The problem with this version is the complete absence of any belongings. According to search team protocols, in such cases, traces of equipment, pieces of fabric, or at least fragments of shoes are always found. Nothing was found here. Attack by a wild animal. The region periodically records incidents involving black bears, which can attack when they feel threatened. However, experts from the North Carolina Department of Wildlife Resources stated that a bear attack that would have resulted in the death of 2 adults would have left clear traces: torn clothing, blood-stained fabric remnants, claw marks on trees or ground, and soil compacted by struggle. No such signs were found. Voluntary escape. Officially, this version was formulated due to the lack of evidence of a crime. Theoretically, the couple could have deliberately left their car, walked through the forest, and taken transportation outside of official routes. However, the results of financial and social analysis completely contradicted this idea. Both left their wallets, cards, and phones behind. There were no movements of funds in their bank accounts after July 17th. No signs of conflict or intent to flee were found in their social contacts. Melissa's family made official statements. She is pregnant, expecting a child. The idea of fleeing in such circumstances is absurd. By the end of August 2005, it became clear that none of the 3 versions had sufficient evidence to support it. The case was reclassified as a disappearance under unknown circumstances. In the fall of 2005, another element appeared in the materials. During a survey of tourists who visited Pisgah during that period, several people reported a strange encounter. They described a man of medium height, appearing to be 55-60 years old, with a thick gray beard and a faded camouflage jacket. He appeared unexpectedly, behaved aggressively, and demanded that they leave his territory. Some claimed that he threatened physical violence, although he did not show any weapons. In November 2005, detectives determined that a former Forest Service employee, Richard Grayson, lived permanently in the area. He had been fired in 1999 after conflicts with tourists and repeated complaints of aggressive behavior. According to archival documents, he owned a small house 5 miles from the Art Loeb Trail. In October 2005, 2 investigators went to the site. They found Grayson near his cabin. The man confirmed that he lived permanently in the forest, but denied any contact with the Barkleys. He allowed a cursory inspection of the dwelling. No items belonging to the missing persons were found. The inspection report states, Numerous old tools and long-term storage products were found. No signs of violence were found. There were no legal grounds for further action against Grayson. His name was added to the case as a person of interest, but the investigation ended there. In early 2006, the case was officially classified as a cold case. The annual review of the archive files was to be conducted only if new information came to light. For the family, this meant the end of active searches by state authorities. Despite the official closure of the operation, various assumptions spread throughout society. Newspapers published articles with sensational headlines about the curse of the Appalachians. Relatives repeatedly organized private search parties. However, all of them ended without results. Thus, as of 2006, the official versions remained open, but none of them had sufficient grounds. The most disturbing factor remained the local recluse. Although there was no evidence, his name was increasingly mentioned in informal conversations among law enforcement officials as a potential threat to tourists. In early 2006, the case of Daniel and Melissa Barkley's disappearance was officially declared a cold case. This meant that active searches were discontinued and investigative actions were limited to periodically reviewing materials and responding to new leads. In practical terms, this meant no new resources, only folders in the county sheriff's office archive. Over the next few years, the only reminders of the couple were brief notes in the local press. Every July, on the eve of another anniversary of their disappearance, the Asheville Citizen-Times newspaper published a few paragraphs. A photo of Daniel and Melissa, a reminder of the ongoing investigation, and a call for anyone with information to come forward. These articles usually took up a small column between the classifieds and city council news. In 2007, the sheriff's office received only 2 reports from citizens who claimed to have seen a similar couple in West Virginia. A check revealed that it was another family of travelers. In 2008, an anonymous call was received about a suspicious camp in a remote part of Pisgah, but a visit by rangers confirmed nothing. In 2009, James Fletcher was appointed the new county sheriff. He instructed one of the detectives to review old cold cases. The Barkley file was reviewed, but no new leads were found. The service's annual report stated, "As of 2009, there is no additional information. No evidence of fraud, financial misconduct, or voluntary flight has been found." From 2010 to 2011, there was no new activity in the case. Barkley's relatives organized several search parties in the mountains on their own, enlisting volunteers and even private investigators. All these initiatives were unsuccessful. No belongings, no skeletal remains, no traces. In 2012, a legal milestone was reached. Under North Carolina law, after 7 years of being missing, people can be officially declared dead. The family filed a petition, and on July 18, 2012, a district judge ruled that Daniel and Melissa Barkley were presumed dead from unknown causes. For their loved ones, this was a formality necessary to settle property and insurance issues, but at the same time, it was a symbolic acknowledgement that all hope was lost. In 2013 and 2014, the case remained in the archives. The only activity was mentions in the press. Local journalists often used the story as an example of the dangerous secrets of the Appalachians. At the same time, in professional police circles, the file was considered hopeless. New crimes and new cases pushed the old disappearance off the agenda. Public memory gradually erased the details. Other tourists continued to disappear in Pisgah Park, and the Barkley case merged into the general statistics. Only the families constantly reminded everyone that the case was not closed. Melissa's mother brought flowers every year to the Big Ivy parking lot, where the couple was last seen. By early 2015, almost 10 years had passed since the disappearance. The case was classified as hopeless. In police reports, it appeared as a single line: Barkley case, unresolved, no further action. The forest was silent, and it seemed that the mystery of the disappearance would remain in the archives forever. Friday, August 14, 2015. At 3:10 p.m., two local hunters, brothers David and Charles Martin, came across an unusual object while surveying hunting grounds in a remote part of Pisgah National Forest. They were traveling off the official trails, about 15 miles southwest of the Big Ivy trailhead. The terrain was characterized by steep slopes, dense undergrowth, and a lack of marked roads. During a short rest stop, David Martin noticed a strange dark object in the crown of an old white oak tree. The object was located at a height of about 6 meters at the junction of two massive branches. Its shape was irregular, and its surface was covered with moss and lichen. From a distance, it resembled a nest or the remains of a large branch broken by a storm. Using binoculars, the hunters saw fragments of synthetic fabric and a metal zipper. At 5:47 p.m., the Martin brothers called the Henderson County Sheriff's Office. The report was recorded in the call log under number 150814-092. It contained the exact coordinates of the object, 35 to 42 N, 82 to 20, as well as digital photos taken with a mobile phone. Following the dispatcher's instructions, the hunters left the site and returned to the settlement. Saturday, August 15, 2015. At 10:30 a.m., a group consisting of one National Park Service ranger and two sheriff's deputies left for the site. The Martin brothers agreed to accompany them and point out the exact tree. At 11:05 a.m., the group arrived at the location. A visual inspection confirmed the presence of a large sleeping bag tightly wedged between the branches of an oak tree. At 1 p.m., the operation to remove the object began. Climbing equipment was used for this purpose: safety systems, ropes, and carabiners. A ranger trained in technical climbing secured the bag with slings and began to lower it gradually. The weight exceeded 45 kilograms, which made it impossible to remove it without auxiliary means. At 1:35 p.m., the sleeping bag was successfully lowered to the ground and placed on a canvas sheet. The fabric was badly damaged, discolored by the sun, torn in many places, and the zipper was destroyed by corrosion. One of the sheriff's assistants took several control photographs for the record, after which the object was opened with a knife along the seam. The remains of two people were found inside. The visible parts of the skeletons were mixed with layers of decayed textiles, fallen leaves, and small debris. Two skulls were immediately identified. One was male, approximately medium-sized, and the other was female, with characteristic morphological features of the pelvis, indicating a past pregnancy. At 2 p.m., the area within a radius of 100 meters around the tree was cordoned off with police tape. Forensic experts and a state medical examiner were called to the scene. The initial report states, "These are likely the remains of two adults who had been in a sleeping bag for a long time." A preliminary connection can be made to the 2005 Barkley cold case. Over the next few hours, the scene was documented. A diagram of the tree's location was drawn up, and its height, approximately 17 meters, and trunk diameter, 1.2 meters, were recorded. The oak tree in which the bag was found belonged to the Quercus alba species, white oak, typical of this part of the Appalachians. All these details were recorded on a map of the area and in a photo report. The evening summary report of August 15th contained the conclusion that the found object could be the key to the case of the disappearance of Daniel and Melissa Barkley, who did not return from a hike in July 2005. For the first time in 10 years, material evidence had emerged that could confirm or refute any of the previous versions. On August 16, 2015, the sleeping bag with the remains was transported to the North Carolina Department of Forensic Science Laboratory in Chapel Hill. The container with the object was hermetically sealed in a plastic box marked with evidence number 15-0815-bar and delivered under guard. All transportation procedures were documented, and the chain of custody was maintained without violation. At 9 a.m. on August 17th, a team of forensic experts began the initial examination. Their task was to separate the bone remains, clean them of organic debris, and determine their basic parameters. Already at the first stage, it was confirmed that the bag contained the remains of two people, a man and a woman. The skeletons were partially intertwined, and the fabric of the sleeping bag had decomposed and held the bones together. The next step was an anthropological assessment. Expert Dr. Linda Carroll noted that the male skeleton corresponds to a person of European descent, approximately 182 centimeters tall, with an estimated age of 25 to 30 years. The female skeleton is approximately 168 centimeters tall, aged 20-25 years. This matched the characteristics of the Barclays. On August 18th, dental records were requested from the archives of two dental clinics in Asheville, where Daniel and Melissa had been treated in 2003-2004. That evening, forensic odontologist Dr. Ray Patterson conducted a comparative analysis. Post-mortem X-rays of the jaws were compared with the archived records. The match of unique fillings, root system features, and orthodontic marks confirmed the identity. On August 19th, at 10:20 a.m., it was officially recorded that the remains belonged to Daniel and Melissa Barclay. Work then began to determine the cause of death. The male skull had several distinct injuries. 3 linear fractures were found in the occipital and parietal regions. The shape and nature of the injuries indicated a blow with a blunt object with great force. According to the forensic expert, such injuries could have been caused by a stone or a wooden club. The fractures were classified as incompatible with life. The official conclusion was traumatic brain injury due to a blow with a blunt object. The woman's remains had no visible bone fractures, but the shape of the pelvis and the condition of the internal cavities attracted the attention of the experts. After thorough cleaning and microscopic analysis, small bone fragments characteristic of a fetus were found in the pelvic cavity. Anthropological examination determined the age of the fetus to be 24 to 26 weeks. This fully coincided with the information from Melissa's medical records, which indicated that she was 6 months pregnant. Despite the absence of external fractures, the experts emphasized that the woman's death was not natural. The level of tissue preservation did not allow the exact mechanism to be determined, but the combination of circumstances, their shared presence in a sleeping bag, the presence of severe injuries on the man, and the fact of pregnancy, pointed to the violent nature of both deaths. On August 20th, 2015, the district medical examiner issued an official report. Person 1, male, 28 years old, death from severe traumatic brain injury. Person 2, female, 25 years old, pregnant, death from an unidentified violent act, confirmed by the presence of a 24-26-week-old fetus. Classification: double homicide. This conclusion was a critical point. The versions of an accident and a wild animal attack were finally ruled out. All documents related to the Barclay disappearance case were reclassified as a homicide investigation. On the same day, the relatives were officially notified of the identification results. For them, this meant the end of a decade of uncertainty, but at the same time, the beginning of a new phase: the search for those responsible for the deaths of Daniel, Melissa, and their unborn child. On August 21, 2015, after confirming the identification of Daniel and Melissa Barclay's remains, the Henderson County Sheriff's Office officially reopened the investigation. The case was assigned to Detective Sergeant Thomas Gray, who had previously participated in the initial phase of the search in 2005. His first task was to retrieve 10-year-old archival documents. 17 boxes of materials were removed from the archive: search sector maps, tourist interrogation reports, financial reports, and duty call logs. The first thing that caught their attention was the 2005 eyewitness accounts. In several reports, tourists independently described an aggressive middle-aged man with a gray beard, wearing an old camouflage jacket. He threatened them, demanding that they leave the area. At the time, these statements were considered secondary. The name that appeared in the materials was Richard Grayson, a former Forest Service employee who was fired in the late 1990s for aggressive behavior. His small wooden house was located 5 miles from where Barkley was last seen. On August 25, 2015, Detective Gray filed a motion for a search warrant. The district court judge agreed, citing the geographical overlap, old tourist testimonies, and the fact that bodies had been found within a radius of Grayson's residence. The warrant was issued on August 26th. At 6:10 a.m. that day, a group of 4 detectives and 5 tactical unit officers arrived at his home. The building was an old cabin with a shed, without electricity, in a state of disrepair. After the warrant was announced, the owner, 65-year-old Richard Grayson, did not resist and allowed the search to proceed. The search lasted 6 hours. All rooms, the attic, the basement, and the surrounding area were checked. 3 hunting knives, several notebooks with everyday notes, and the remains of old equipment were seized. None of the items were directly related to the Barkley case. Laboratory tests for DNA or blood traces were negative. On August 27th, during a press conference, Sheriff Whitmore officially stated, "Grayson remains a person of interest in the investigation, but there is currently insufficient evidence to bring charges." In all documents, he was listed as a person of interest. In September 2015, the results of the examinations were finally entered into the central database. The case was classified as a double murder by persons unknown. Further investigation was limited to periodic checks and waiting for new evidence. The family received Daniel and Melissa's remains for burial. On October 3, 2015, a ceremony was held at the cemetery in Asheville, attended by relatives and close friends. For them, it marked the end of a decade of uncertainty. But it did not answer the main question: who took their children's lives and why? The final report for 2015 stated, "The case is open, classified as a double homicide. No specific suspect has been identified. The investigation is ongoing, but there is no evidence base." Thus, even after the investigation was reopened, the Barkley case remained unsolved.